No one wants to believe it. But sometimes, the people who claim to love you are the ones who hurt you most. Not with fists, not with rage, but with silence, with guilt, with expectations so invisible you don't even realize you're drowning in them. Schopenhauer warned us, love, especially from family, is rarely pure. It's often transactional, conditional, disguised as care, but rooted in control. They say they want the best for you, but what they really want is what makes them feel safe. They want you to follow the path they understand. They want you to stay close, behave, belong, because your freedom threatens their comfort. So they'll praise you when you obey, and punish you when you don't. Not always with anger, but with disappointment, with withdrawal, with those sharp looks that say, "You've changed. You're not who we thought you were. Why can't you just be like you used to?" And the child inside you, the one that's still trying to earn love, hears those words and feels like he's failing, like he's being exiled from the only place that's ever felt like home. But what if the home was never safe to begin with? What if you weren't loved for who you are, but for who they needed you to be? Emotional control doesn't always look like abuse. Sometimes it looks like love, like protection, like, "We're just worried about you." But what they're really worried about is losing their version of you. Schopenhauer believed that most relationships, even the closest ones, are fueled by ego, by possession. People don't love you as you are. They love the role you play in their life. And the moment you shift, the moment you step out of the script they've written for you, you become unfamiliar, threatening, uncomfortable. So they push you back, not with anger, but with guilt, not with force, but with shame. The disappointment in their voice, the silence on the other end of the phone, the subtle comparison to someone who turned out better. The way they make your growth feel like betrayal. You start shrinking yourself just to keep the peace, dimming your light so no one feels outshined, biting your tongue because they won't understand. And soon, you stop being yourself. You become a version of yourself that's digestible, acceptable, familiar. But familiarity isn't love. It's comfort. And comfort isn't always safe. Because the people who fear your growth will always label it as rebellion. They'll say you're distant, arrogant, changed. And they're right. You have changed. You've outgrown the box they kept you in. But they don't see it that way. They see your independence as a threat, your silence as defiance, your distance as disloyalty. So they'll do what they've always done. Pull you back, emotionally, subtly, constantly. And unless you wake up to it, you'll keep shrinking, apologizing, performing, until there's nothing left of who you truly are. Carl Jung believed that no one becomes fully themselves until they've separated from the psychological grip of their family. Not just moved out, not just disagreed, but truly detached from the invisible expectations and identities projected onto them since childhood. Because until you do, you're not living your life. You're living theirs. You're chasing goals that were never yours. Reacting to fears they passed down without question. Living under rules you didn't choose, but feel guilty breaking. And guilt, that's the leash they never have to hold. You carry it for them. Schopenhauer once said, "Compassion is the basis of morality." But there's a difference between compassion and self-erasure, between love and self-abandonment. When you're constantly making yourself smaller to fit the emotional needs of others, you're not being kind. You're being controlled. And what makes this harder is that no one around you will call it manipulation. They'll call it family. They'll say you're ungrateful, that you've forgotten where you came from, that you owe them your loyalty, your presence, your silence. But you don't owe anyone your silence, not even the people who raised you. The truth is, the moment you start to awaken, to really question, to unlearn, to grow, the people closest to you might not clap. They might resist. They might guilt you, ignore you, or try to pull you back. And that's not a sign you're wrong. It's a sign you're leaving the version of you that made them feel safe. And if you're starting to feel that shift inside, if you've ever sensed that your growth is being mistaken for betrayal, subscribe and hit the bell. Not everyone's ready for this path. But if you are, you shouldn't walk it alone. Most people think trauma has to be loud to be real, that if no one hit you, yelled at you, abandoned you, then your childhood was fine. But what if the deepest wounds are the ones no one ever named? Jung believed that the most dangerous parts of us aren't the visible scars. It's the invisible beliefs we inherited. Beliefs like, love must be earned. Speaking up is disrespectful. Your needs are too much. You only matter when you're useful. And where do most of these beliefs come from? Home. From people who may have meant well, but never did the work themselves. So they passed their wounds to you, wrapped in advice, covered in tradition, disguised as love. Schopenhauer warned that most people don't want you to grow, not because they hate you, but because your evolution highlights their stagnation. Your healing threatens their denial. Your clarity exposes their confusion. So they'll stop you, not out of cruelty, but fear. And the cycle continues. You carry shame that isn't yours. You suppress emotions that never had a safe place to land. You confuse approval with love, and silence with peace. Until one day, you realize you're becoming the same kind of person who confused you. You give what you got. You withhold what was withheld. You repeat what you never questioned. Unless you break it. Unless you stop. Unless you ask, who would I be if I was never trying to be what they needed? That's where it begins. Not in confrontation, but in clarity. You don't have to hate them. You just have to stop losing yourself in them. Separation doesn't always mean distance. It means distinction. The quiet decision to no longer be shaped by someone else's unhealed story. Most people think breaking cycles means cutting people off, burning bridges, going to war. But real separation is quieter than that. It's when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop seeking permission, when you stop shrinking just to be understood. It's when you realize, I don't need to be accepted here. I need to be myself somewhere. Schopenhauer believed that solitude is not just the refuge of the wise. It's the crucible where the self is forged. And for some, that solitude begins the moment they stop trying to fit back into the version of themselves others were comfortable with. You stop showing up out of guilt. You stop calling just to avoid tension. You stop agreeing just to keep the peace. And you realize, peace wasn't ever real if you had to betray yourself to maintain it. This kind of separation isn't cold. It's necessary. It's not about proving a point. It's about reclaiming your voice. And the truth is, some people won't understand. They'll call it selfish. They'll say you've changed, that you're distant. And they're right. Because you've stopped being what they shaped and started becoming what you were meant to be. Not out of rebellion, but out of clarity. This is the beginning of emotional adulthood. When you choose your path, not from anger, but from awareness. When you can love someone and still walk away. When you can forgive someone and still choose silence. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest way to say, "This is who I am now, and I won't go back." Something strange happens when you finally stop performing. You get quieter, slower, but heavier, in the best way. You begin to feel grounded. Not because life gets easier, but because you're no longer floating in someone else's narrative. You're rooted in your own truth, and nothing shakes like it used to. Schopenhauer believed that strength begins the moment we detach from what the world expects of us, and that includes the expectations of those who say they love us most. Because love, real love, doesn't demand that you stay small. It doesn't punish your distance. It doesn't withhold warmth until you behave. But most of us have never experienced that kind of love. So we settle for its counterfeit: conditional approval, emotional dependence, performative peace. And when you finally walk away from that dynamic, not with anger, but with certainty, you realize something. You were never hard to love. You were just too awake to keep pretending. That's when the power shifts. You start building boundaries, not walls, but clear lines. You start choosing silence, not to hide, but to protect. You stop apologizing for who you are becoming. And what used to feel like loss starts to feel like space. Space to think, to breathe, to rebuild, not to prove anything, but because for the first time in your life, you're doing it for you, and you're not afraid of who that makes uncomfortable anymore. You can miss someone and still not go back. You can love someone and still not answer. You can forgive someone and still move on without explanation. Because peace built on suppression isn't peace. It's just silence waiting to break. You won't get a ceremony for breaking free. No one will throw a party because you stopped betraying yourself. There won't be a moment where they clap for your healing. What there will be is silence. Long, uncomfortable silence. The kind that creeps in when you're no longer filling your life with noise, with guilt, with pretending. And in that silence, you'll meet someone you haven't really known, someone who's been buried under years of expectations, shame, and the fear of disappointing others. That someone is you. And he's not weak, he's not angry, he's not cruel, he's just honest. And for the first time in your life, he's tired of performing. You'll look around and realize how many of your relationships were built on a version of you that never existed. How many people loved your obedience, not your truth. How much of your identity was just survival. And that's when it clicks. You weren't crazy. You weren't ungrateful. You weren't too much. You were just ready. Ready to stop carrying wounds that weren't yours. Ready to stop playing roles you never chose. Ready to stop mistaking peace for silence. Schopenhauer didn't say this path would be easy. He just said it would be necessary. And now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. So ask yourself, if they never praised you again, would you still become who you're meant to be? If they walked away, would you still walk forward? Because that's freedom. Not being alone, but being clear. But here's the thing. Once you reclaim your mind from the people who shaped it, a new battle begins. A quieter one. With your own hunger. With your own desire. With the need to fill the emptiness they left behind. And if you're not careful, you'll end up giving that power away again. This time, to love, to sex, to attention, to women. In the next video, we'll expose the brutal truth behind that chase. What Diogenes understood about men, and their obsession with what they can't control. If you're ready for that level of honesty, I'll meet you there.